Thank you.
Joe, you ready?
A morning of talking, so I'll try to save some stuff for you.
We got speed? Here we go. 3, 2, 1, action clip.
This film, Color Purple, is great drama, loaded with emotion, and yet it comes across as an upbeat movie. Now, you've said it's the greatest challenge of your career, and you were very apprehensive. Why?
Well, I think I was apprehensive because it was a subject that I hadn't tackled before in my career, which was a drama. And I had a lot of experience with dramas within the fantasies and adventures that I had made, but I had never really dealt with one-on-one relationships where the story was not going to, in this case, upstage the characters. In Color Purple, the characters are the story. So I was a little apprehensive at first, yes.
You could make any movie you want. Why did you choose a black movie at this time, or is that just incidental?
Well, I never really looked upon it as just a black movie. I think if there was a question of race, and if it was a film about race, I don't know if I would have done the movie. But I felt that it was a movie for all times and for all people, and it was a humanist story, and that's how I felt reading the book. And I just decided to direct the movie just based on a weekend read of the book. It was given me by Kathy Kennedy, and she didn't give it to me as a producer to a director saying, I think you should make this. She said, as a woman to a man, I think you should read this. And I had no idea reading it that I would be interested, but the book really got to me quite deeply.
It got to all the men in the audience. Men and women were crying over that book. Whoopi Goldberg said that she always liked a quiet set. Or she didn't like a quiet set. Didn't like a quiet set. She liked utter lunacy. Now, that's an intense internal role. How did that work out directing her? That lunacy, or what was the set like?
Well, you know, Whoopi did something differently than she's ever done before in her career. That is, she found one character, not 15, and she, in a very sensitive way, developed Celie into a real person. She was already a real person in the book, but a movie role is entirely different than a character role from a novel, and she had to start from scratch, and we developed Celie together. And Celie is not schizophrenic. She's not bouncing off the walls. She's not several people. She's one rather sad, lonely person to begin with. She's in fact the ugly duckling story, and I think it was a relief for Whoopi in a way to be able to work surrounded by sensitivity and quiet and no rush, and she worked very well within those conditions of no pressure.
You also said that this was your most personal film. Do you mean in the sense of personal satisfaction? I mean, you had such great challenges, and you've done such incredible work. You're the master of suspense adventure. In what ways do you mean this is your most personal film?
Hitchcock's a master of suspense and adventure, I think.
Well,
but that's okay.
Whatever you've done.
I just had to slip that in real fast. Well, when I say personal, this movie harkens back to my involvement with E.T. in that when I made E.T., at the time, that was a very personal film for me. I felt the film was really about divorce in America, believe it or not. I had a very strong feeling about that, and I felt the single parent and the kid who was lonely for his father, and this other miracle came into his life, and he grew because of it. And I really could relate to that, and that was a very personal challenge for me. And by the same token, Color Purple is very personal for me because I made it personal. I made the book personal. When I read the book, I suddenly kept it. I wouldn't give it away to anybody else. I wanted part of it to belong to me. And because I just came to love all the characters in the novel. And I wanted to do it justice on the screen. I wanted to bring all those characters to life. I didn't want just a panache of faces. I wanted, you know, a roll call of individuals in the movie.
Well, we want to thank you for sharing the film with us. It's a beautiful film.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay?
Great.
Thank you very much. Well, you really are the main character of this film, the most important character of this absolutely wonderful film. Is it true that Alice Walker, the author of The Color Purple, suggested you for this role? How did it come about?
I wrote to her.
Well, you wrote to her?
I wrote her a letter, but as it turned out, she had already seen my work. I wrote her a letter to introduce myself and say if they were going to make a film, I would like to be in it as anything. And as it turned out, she had already seen me. She'd seen my shows a couple of times and had already sent all my information down there. So it was a very, very nice surprise to discover that she knew me, and I didn't know her. And that just made me giggle.
You wrote to her because, of course, you'd read the book.
I read it, yeah.
And it made such an impact on you.
It was just beautifully written. I mean, it's well written and written in such an unusual way. I just felt that, you know, if they were going to do anything, I'd like a shot at any part, you know. Dirt on the floor, Lovely or Blind, whatever they had, screen door, you know.
And there you are.
And here, yes.
As Celie,
Yes.
as I say, the most important part in the film, and your first film role.
Yeah.
You said you're an instinctive actor. Now, what does that mean? How does that work for you?
I just, for me, it just means I know certain things. I'll see a setup, and I know what to do. I just know what to do, and I don't know why, and I don't know how it came about, but I just can do that.
You were just born with it.
Yeah, yeah.
But there was something, I had to laugh in the press kit. It said that you and Steven Spielberg, who certainly is just a grand director,
Yes.
that you both had a great love of movies from the 30s and 40s and a great knowledge of old movies, so that you could define the role of Celie by a suggestion that this is like a scene from...
Yes, yes.
Well, tell us about that. That's
Well,
crazy.
It was wonderful. Both Stephen and I are buffs, and we know nuance, you know. And when you watch old films, what you see are movie stars who have background in stage and as character actors. That is how I view myself. So he would say, look, this is I don't know, Boo Radley from To Kill a Mockingbird, the first time you see him. That feeling. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, I remember that. Or here is Lifeboat. It's the attitude Tallulah has when her makeup falls overboard. Okay, I got you. You know, which makes for fast, not a whole lot of time of the director
Shorthand.
trying. Yes, it is shorthand. That's what it was.
It's like the old story about the jokes, but
Yes.
on the other hand, Whoopi, you realize, of course, that this was kind of part of the method acting. This is what Stanislavski first tried to do. When you're suffering tragedy, think of the time that your mother first smacked you for taking, you know, whatever. That's true, isn't it?
Well, it could be. I mean, for me, it's just my teachers are John Garfield and Claudette Colbert and, you know, Hattie McDaniel and all of those folks. So I pretty much am doing, you'll see like parts of Body and Soul, you know. You'll see certain nuances and you'll be watching a film and say, oh, okay, Goldberg, I know where that came from now. I mean, that's what it is. But in terms of technique, technique only works if you're in the mood, you know. You have to be in the mood to drudge up those experiences, and if there's a way where you don't have to torture yourself to get to them, I think it's probably a lot easier on your mind.
You said that you regard yourself as a character actor, and you also said you didn't want to be a star, but you really became a star on Broadway with your one-woman show. If that isn't stardom, I'd like to know what is.
Well,
You're known all over the, you know, time, everything else.
I became a media personality. I haven't really done anything to merit being a star. Liz Taylor's a star, you know. I'm kind of the new kid in town, something different and unusual, new and improved, kind of box of cereal or something with a surprise inside. We'll see whether I'm star material or not.
But you did conquer Broadway, and you went all over the U.S., you went all over Europe with that show. Was that essentially...
This is before Broadway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was that essentially the same show that you brought to Broadway?
Kind of. I'm a lazy person, you know, and so I never cement myself to do one thing. I like to change things around because I get bored easily. So in the sense that there's a specific structure of, you know, this many characters, yes, but sometimes the same characters with different stories. Sometimes I'll try something out just to see if I like it, you know, because an audience never knows that what they're seeing is not what's supposed to be there, because I go and I just do it like I've been doing it every night.
Oh, no wonder you want to remain Whoopi Goldberg and not persona Liz Taylor. It must be exciting.
It's an amazing thing. Liz Taylor has put out such a great body of work. I just saw Virginia Woolf again, and I remembered why she was so great. You know, I remember about her. I aspire to be great at what I do as well, but I don't think I'm quite ready for the label of star because it seems to be very limiting. She came along at a time where it wasn't limiting, where you could do everything. But now there seems to be very stagnant to be a star. I should much rather be a river or something, you know, where I could keep going.
When did you discover that you had this unique ability to create so many compelling and humorous characters?
Well, I don't know. I've always known that I could do this. I never, up until 4 years ago, thought of pursuing being a solo performer. I've been an actor for 20 years. I've done a lot of theater and stuff, but I never dawned on me to try anything on my own. And I was forced into the situation because I used to work with a partner who couldn't make a gig, and I had to go up and do it.
Were you scared to death?
Kind of, but the people I went to work for said, oh, don't worry about it. You know, it's just like doing a play without the other actors. You just do a monologue from the play. So I wrote it, and I did it, and folks really were like, whoa. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. But I had to pursue it just to see. So that came along about 4 years ago. That's when I discovered there was some humor in me. Up until then, I was never really particularly humorous.
It's
Except,
hard
you
to
know,
believe.
at home, you know.
But it was always there. What do you think the future holds for you? What is it that you want to do? More movies, stage?
More work.
More
Yes,
work.
I want to be a working actor.
Well, I
That's what I
certainly
want.
hope we see a lot more of you because I just love that movie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
And I love you as Celie.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. And Hal.
Okay,
And how? I'm glad, Claire.
Well, of all the women in The Color Purple, you are the one we all probably identify with the most because you're very strong, you're warm, you're a fighter, and
Thank you. More? Go ahead, Claire.
well, how do you think, first of all, that Alice Walker feels about your role? Have you talked to her
Oh, I know
about
how
it?
she feels.
You've talked to her?
Yeah, I've talked to her. She was on set with us practically every day.
Was she
Doing
really?
the shooting. Yes. And the characters, Sophia and Harpo, are modeled after her parents. So she sent me pictures of her own parents. And Sophia and her mother is much bigger than her father. So Sophia is more robust than Harpo. And she tells me that I am Sophia and that I remind her of her mother, which is the biggest compliment you can have. Of course, Willard Pugh is Harpo in my mind. And when I saw him screen test, I said, this man is Harpo. And if he doesn't get the part, then it's okay if I don't, because he is it. Sophia, however, for me, is a combination of so many women in my history. She represents a legacy of black women, I think.
She represents a legacy. I remember many mothers
Very much
like Sophia.
Strong, independent, knows who she is. Her only tragedy, Claire, is that she did not know that she was born before her time. And she was proud of being a black woman, but just didn't recognize that she couldn't do the same thing that white women do. She couldn't assert herself at that time in 1922. And she could not be who she wanted to be. And that she had to take orders from a woman such as Miss Millie, who certainly doesn't have the strength of character that she does, but that because of the time, she had to do what she was told. And that's her tragedy. That's her biggest failing, I think.
It's interesting, Willard, that weak man, opposites attract. Weak men always are attracted to stronger women, almost always.
Okay, but then who is to say he was a weak man?
I want to hear about what you think.
See, it seems as if he may be a weak man because he lets her do certain things. But love is blind, crippling, crazy. You know, and a lot of things happen. In Harpo's life, what goes behind that person to make that person the way they are is a story that people should really look into and try to see through,
Yeah.
not the surface.
There's a
because
whole
lot
history of
times
Harpo.
you have to laugh to keep from crying. In a lot of situations that Harpo's been through. Mother dying when he was young, seeing her be beat to death. Here comes Celie comes into his life, a stepmother who he doesn't know, trying to take the place of his real mother. So he doesn't like that. Then the father's beating her all the time. Then finally he falls in love with Sophia, somebody he really loves, and he wants to do anything he can to keep her and keep her happy. And then, but she won't mind because most of the women during that period are supposedly doing what the man said do, and Sophia wouldn't. And so he goes to the father for help. He says beat her. Celie, who's always getting beaten, and he goes to her and says, well, what did she say? She says beat her. He thinks it's right. That's the thing to do until he tries it, and she ends up whipping up on him. And it was not that Harpo could not whip Sophia. He couldn't hit Sophia because he loved Sophia. He
Yeah.
knew what happened to his mother, and that was the least thing he wanted to do. He
Thank
was
you,
just
darling.
stopping himself from doing something he knew really in his heart wasn't right.
Thank you,
And when she
sweetness.
left him, that really broke him down because that was a part of him that was gone. But it made him realize that he had to be his own man. He's always been a man, but he was not his own man. He was trying to live his father's life and do what they thought he should do. So he starts out and builds his own juke joint and becomes his own person.
We sympathized with Harpo's father, Mr., because we felt he was victimized because of his own father. With you, it's kind of a turnaround, which means that there is hope, that some people indeed can learn from a living experience.
That's true. And the living experience was losing my wife and my kids that I really loved. That was what woke me up. The same thing that woke him up. You know, I left when I left Mr. Only thing he had was Celia and me, really. And once Celia walked out on him, told me he was no good, and then I was no longer there because I'm trying to live my own life and be back with my wife again. He had nobody, and the feeling of having nobody is the worst feeling in the world. And it really can wake you up. And when she left me, I had nobody. So I had to become my own person and realize, what can I do to change my life? And he had to wake up and say, what can I do to change my life? And which was trying to help Celia and her sister reunite, would never erase all the things he's done. But yet then, it's like they say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. This dog wasn't too old to learn. You can always learn. When you get too old to learn, you just might well roll over and die.
That's right.
you're gonna
And
learn
that's
something new
something
every
we
day.
forget. We think that a character is engraved in stone, but in fact it undergoes changes all the time,
Every
doesn't
day
it?
somebody
Absolutely,
learns
Claire.
something new. We don't always like to admit it, but we do.
Oprah, when I saw you last night after the screening, we were all, of course, in kind of a state of shock because the film was very moving. There were a lot of tears and a lot of laughter. It was an uplifting film. And it does have that universal theme of human relationships. But you said there was one scene that particularly moved you. Which was that?
Well, there's several scenes, and I vary from day to day. I think, for me, in the entire movie, excluding Harpo and Sophia, my favorite scene in the movie is the scene where Miss Celie and Miss Shug are sitting on the bed reading the letters. I literally had, I didn't carry Kleenex, I carried a napkin from dinner downstairs. A friend of mine said, don't even bother with Kleenex, just take the napkin or a towel with you. It's what I did. And by that time I had a collar, and like the tears had dripped down into my little collar, and they were dripping down. And, you know, I had to unbutton my blouse because it was getting soaked. Was my favorite scene in the movie is that whole interaction between Miss Celia and Miss Shug. For Harpo, been talking a lot today. For Harpo and Sophia, my favorite scene is when Sophia goes back to the house to see the children after 8 years. And the most magnificent moment to me that is shared by Sophia and Harpo, when you understand all that Willard has been explaining, that, you know, outwardly he appears to be just this falling through the roof, clumsy kind of guy who's subservient to Sophia. In that moment, when Sophia walks up the step and she touches Harpo's hand and he looks at her, you feel the love that he has for her. You know everything that he's thought and has been thinking about her for the past 8 years while she was in jail. And that to me is just a glorious moment. It's like making love on camera. It's as close as we come to it.
Yeah.
The human touching.
Yes, it was a magnificent moment.
It's something
and
that words you don't have to say in words. It's just, you know.
I will tell you, that was Steven Spielberg's moment. What people don't recognize is that what role a director plays. I mean, I think people feel that, you know, you hear the name Steven Spielberg and you automatically associate that with greatness, but you don't really know how involved that director was. And he was involved to the point of he told us everything to do. He allowed us to do whatever we wanted the character to do. But that moment, that hand, we had done that scene a couple of times, and Steven said, you know what's missing from this? Missing from this scene? You need to get Harpo to react to you, and you need to do something to let him react to you. When you go up the steps the last time, I just want you to touch his hand, just accidentally touch his hand so that you force him to acknowledge that you're there. And there were lots of moments like that. I'm walking up the road, and he says, I want you to turn around, and I just want you to smile at him. And he directs.
Because the director is your eyes, you know.
Yeah.
With theater, you can perform, and then, you know, I know immediately when I stink. Because that audience is like 1,000 hands touching, but they don't quite make it to your body. Awful feeling. So with television and movies, all you have is that camera and you. And the director you have to have 100%, 150% trust in that director. Because he is your eyes to let you know what the instincts that you have are right on.
He was the soul of the characters.
But the remarkable thing about this, of course, is that Steven Spielberg started a whole new genre, really, of film.
Yes.
Adventure, special effects. With a
The kind of special effects you see every commercial, and everybody has little, you know, the spaceship going around.
And he started a new genre.
Yeah.
Because now it just will open up the doors for a lot of black actors and actresses to expound themselves, directors also, and writers to do their work. Because now we have someone who is a movie mogul who has taken a big risk by doing a movie like this. It's an all-black picture. Here, this little Jewish guy is directing all these black people. Never been done before. I mean, well, Norman Jewison did with Soldier Story. I don't want to slight him.
But that was a black experience.
Yes,
this is a
universal experience.
As a matter of fact,
everybody.
I mean, it's hard to say, but you forget the characters.
You forget the
black
color.
characters. You're just involved with people.
Then we've achieved our job and everything is done. That's what we were trying to do, and I couldn't have said it any better.
Yes, Claire, you really have said it the best.
Yeah, and he just allowed us that opportunity to put
And
it out
here
for
we
the
are
world to
talking to a famous talk host from
Well,
Chicago.
thank you, thank
now, everyone's saying that there indeed is Oscar time for
You think so?
Oh, I'm sure. So, what are you going to do now? Are you going to continue acting, or are you going to just...
You know, this whole Oscar talk frightens me because I declare I hadn't thought about it. I declare, Claire, I hadn't... Claire, I do declare I had not been thinking about Oscar. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, think about your acceptance speech. You're so good with words.
But she's been saying all day she's looking for a man.
I'm not saying that anymore.
Oscar's coming.
And Oscar's coming.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Quincy, you're not only, of course, responsible for the music in this film on the credits, but you're also listed as a producer, one of the producers, one of the 4 producers. This is, I guess, your first production experience, certainly in a film of this magnitude.
That's for sure.
How did that happen, and were you thrilled, and what were your responsibilities?
Oh, well, you know, that's as good as it can get. It is to be listed as a co-producer with Steven and Kathy and Frank. I've always wanted to be involved in a film from the blank page, and I couldn't ask for a better way to do it. You know, at this stage of my life, it's really the way to go. It's wonderful.
A wonderful film.
Incredible, and it's incredible people. It was a great learning experience, and we shared a lot of experiences too. And it was a way to find out about everything about filmmaking that you've always been afraid to ask. You know, Steven was so patient on the plane. He'd sit and explain to me spherical lenses and the 400 does and the 85 does and everything else, and we talk about it. Come look at it, and the next day you see it in dailies, and it's a fantastic way to learn. It's like going to the Rolls Royce of USC's, you know, because he loves to share and talk about what he does, and it's how to teach people, you know, and it was fantastic, really fantastic. I mean, I really understand. I feel it. It's better to feel it and eat it rather than talk about it and theorize it, you know. Great.
Oh, I'm sure. You said from the blank page, of
right.
course, after the novel was written, after
yes,
the book, with such an impact. But what I wanted to know is, did you have any input in the writing of it? Because the screenplay was quite brilliant. Who made the decision what to leave in and what to take out?
Steven. Oh, absolutely.
Did he discuss that with you?
He discusses with everybody. But he and Minnow started, and they Minnow came up with the idea that convinced everybody that it could be a film, because a lot of writers, were very negative and said it can't be a film. It's an epistolary piece. It can never be a narrative, and we had to get it to a narrative form before it could work as a film. And Steven still had to be thoroughly convinced that it was a film too. He saw it in his mind though, all the time. We used to drive around in a car and he'd say, "Write this down. We're going to have a transition here as the dog." We look down at the dog and we see elephants' foots here, feet, in terms of the transitions from Africa to Georgia and all these wild ideas, because he's got a mind that just never stops creating. He's like a jazz musician, and the ideas were just pouring out. And then Minnow came in with the blueprint about just emotionally, structurally, how we make it into a film, and then it started to just be grow and grow and grow. And then Minnow would write these big passages for music, and would say, "How about if we try this?" and we'd do that and so forth. And it's the same way it happens in records. It just starts to, after a while, it takes a growth, and goes to a third place.
Oh, but I was interested about the music. You mean to say that the script writer, Menno, actually made places for the music?
Yeah, Steven too.
Oh,
but
well,
I was asking him to do that, though. I said, don't forget that black people have music all the time in their life, all the time. There's music everywhere, and so Menno never forgot that. And I'm telling you, one time I wanted to kill him because he had 81 minutes of score and 28 minutes of source music. But no, he got that real quick, and so. They're very bright people now. I mean, we're talking about Minnow and Steven are unbelievable. So they.
There's nothing wrong with Quincy. I mean,
but you know what I'm saying. I mean,
of course.
Most people though they tune out when it comes to music,
Yes.
But Steven's very musical, and Minnow loves music, and so it was throwing the ball around a lot, So he'd say that this spot would be good for this transition and so forth, and it worked.
It worked. It worked so well, but also. That was all original music that you wrote.
Well, there's some things in there that are traditional songs, and the whole
Well, I
idea was
wondered
to try to get the traditional songs in, so you couldn't tell the difference. The first thing Suge Avery sings, "Dirty Dozens," is followed by a song called Miss Celie's Blues, which is straight from the book. That's the one, Sister. Now that was written. That was the original song. And the one before, the trick was, we took the other one, was written in Dirty Dozens was written in 1924, and we wanted it to sound like it had come from the same piece of cloth. And that was the fun, was to try to write something, period, that sounded like something that was so authentic, because this was like the national anthem of the juke joints, Dirty Dozens. And so we had to follow that with our song, Miss Celie's Blues. We had Coleman Hawkins in one spot, It was just a dream of a challenge.
Well, everyone knows you're great. We've had such respect in the industry. 60 nominations? I don't know how many Emmys. We could go on and on with your awards and with your contributions and your Thriller album and the E.T. with Steven Spielberg, all those things that have given, and scores for films that have given us all such great pleasure. But the thing that interests me, and that of course I didn't know, you seem to have also a complete historic knowledge of music, American music, American black music, which is part of the culture. Has this always been an interest in you?
Well,
you?
I was curious about it, and it's strange to start to be analytical about something that you've been in for 25 years, because I guess 14 to 15 years ago, I started to ask myself the question, what links does the black music really have with Africa? I mean, specifically, because it sounds from the surface, it sounds like it could be many big differences, but I underestimated the challenge, because I thought it would take 3 months, and it took about 14 to 15 years. I still haven't finished, and went all the way back to 479 AD to really try to explore where all the rhythms came from, the Berbers and the Moorish influences, and Bizet and Ravel, Rimsky-Korsakov, and even Stravinsky, and then the interchange between interplay between what happened with the mazurka and the ragtime, how that thing happened when the European classical composers were really writing ragtime. Debussy wrote Le Petit Nègre, based on a tap dancer in New Orleans, and it's been fun to see what it's all about.
Yes.
It's really fun.
Is that ever glorious? You're opening up your whole mind to history, and now I know what you do with your spare time.
No.
I want to thank you for talking to us, and the movie was simply superb.
I am so happy that you liked it.
Thank you.
Thank you.